Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that meticulously sifts through the noise to bring you the essential insights you truly need, precisely when you need them. In an age overflowing with data, just an absolute torrent of numbers, charts, and diagrams, clarity isn't just a virtue anymore. It's rapidly becoming your most potent superpower. We are just relentlessly bombarded with information, from project dashboards flashing urgent warnings to these incredibly intricate architectural plans that demand absolute precision. But let's be honest with ourselves for a second. How much of that daily deluge truly communicates, rather than just leaves us feeling, well, utterly overwhelmed and confused?
That's a truly critical question, isn't it? Far too often, I think, we make the mistake of equating the sheer quantity of information with genuine quality of understanding. We just pile on more data, more visuals, more reports, hoping that somehow, magically, understanding will emerge. But it rarely does it? In this deep dive, we're taking a masterclass from one of the true titans of information design, Edward Tufte. And we're applying his timeless, universally applicable principles directly to the incredibly complex and, let's face it, data-rich world of construction. Think of what we're about to unpack as, well, a fundamental shortcut. A shortcut to making every single blueprint, every progress report, every data visualization not just vaguely understood, but truly seen and with immediate, crystal clarity.
Exactly that. We're going to dive deep into Tufte's foundational ideas, starting with this concept he calls maximizing the data-ink ratio. Now, this isn't just some catchy phrase. It's a really rigorous philosophy. It ensures every single bit of ink on your page, every pixel on your screen, serves only one master, the data itself. And, conversely, will relentlessly focus on avoiding what he famously termed chart junk. Those distracting non-data elements that do nothing but clutter our understanding, obscure insights, and slow down critical decision-making. It's really about stripping away all the superfluous stuff to get right to the very essence of what needs to be communicated.
And the relevance of this deep dive for you, our listener, couldn't be more profound, I think. Whether you're an architect meticulously designing a new building, maybe a project manager wrestling with a complex construction schedule, or heck, even if you're just trying to make lucid sense of a complicated budget spreadsheet. These principles are absolutely essential. They're not just about aesthetics, not just making things look nice. They're about efficiency, accuracy, and real impact. We'll even draw some fascinating parallels between Tufte's meticulous philosophy and the elegant clarity you find in the iconic architectural illustrations of our series hero, Francis Ching, proving definitively, I believe, that good design isn't about making things merely pretty. Instead, it's about profoundly respecting your audience and, crucially, respecting the integrity of the data itself.
Okay, let's unpack this profound challenge then. We're living in an era of truly staggering information overload. It's not just a buzzword. It's our daily reality. It often feels like we're not just swimming in data, but actively drowning in a sea of it. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, once made this startling observation. He said that as a global society, humans now create as much information every 2 days as was created from the dawn of civilization up until 2003. Just think about that for a moment. We're talking about an amount of data approaching 5 exabytes. 5 exabytes.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, 1 exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. That's like taking every single word ever written in human history and multiplying it by 10,000 or something. It's almost beyond human comprehension, yet it's the environment we operate in daily.
It's a mind-boggling scale indeed. And nowhere is this deluge more palpable, perhaps, than in our rapidly evolving urban environments. We have this extraordinary profusion of what's often called urban big data, sensed on a tremendous scale through an ever-growing array of sophisticated technologies. Take the Copenhagen wheel, for example. This ingenious device essentially transforms a regular bicycle into a smart electric hybrid. And while it's fantastic for individual riders, it's also a miniature data factory, constantly streaming real-time information about hyperlocal air quality, noise levels, and even nuanced traffic patterns.
Right. So much data coming off just one bike.
Exactly. Now, for urban planners and city managers, that's incredibly fertile ground for understanding our cities in unprecedented detail. But for construction professionals, just imagine how that granular real-time data could directly inform your delivery schedules, maybe your dust mitigation plans for a sensitive urban site, or even precise noise pollution controls needed to comply with local regulations. It presents both an immense opportunity for insight and an equally immense challenge for comprehension. How do you use it all?
And when we, as construction professionals, fail to make clear sense of this torrent of information, especially in a field as inherently complex and high stakes as construction, the impact isn't just inconvenient, it's severe. Unclear information directly and fundamentally stifles effective decision-making and ultimately compromises project success. The PMBOK guide, that's the project management body of knowledge, essentially the global standard playbook for project management, points out something critical. It says stakeholders permeate all aspects of a project. They define requirements, they participate actively in planning, and they ultimately determine acceptance criteria.
Everyone's involved.
In such an intricate, multifaceted environment where so many diverse voices and interests are involved, clear engagement and unambiguous communication are absolutely paramount. If the information being presented isn't immediately clear, how can anyone from the client right down to the site foreman possibly make a truly informed, effective decision?
Precisely. And this isn't just about the initial decisions, is it? It impacts the ongoing health of a project right through its life cycle. Project controls, which are so often and so heavily reliant on the visual display of data, think progress charts, budget analyses, risk matrices, they're the absolute backbone of effective program management. Without robust, clear controls, managers struggle not just to identify, but critically, to accurately assess emerging trends. Is that dip a blip or a disaster? This erosion of insight directly leads to an erosion of confidence and support from owners and investors. It isn't just an aesthetic preference. It directly impacts project outcomes, financial backing, and, well, the long-term viability of the entire undertaking.
It's baffling sometimes, isn't it? Even when there's a clearer, better way, maybe a common-sense solution staring us right in the face, we often see this deep-seated human resistance to change. Why do you think that is? Especially in a pragmatic field like construction where efficiency is supposed to be king. As one source notes, and I think it's such a profound observation, common sense is not common at all. For years, traditional, often demonstrably less effective methods have stubbornly persisted, even when demonstrably better, clearer approaches exist. I think we've all been in those meetings, right? Staring at a messy spreadsheet or a cluttered diagram that gets passed around simply because, well, that's how we've always done it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a comfort in the familiar, even if the familiar is inefficient or even misleading.
Yeah, that comfort zone trap.
You've really hit on something there. And this resistance, this sort of clinging to suboptimal methods, can have profound, even devastating consequences beyond mere inefficiency. Displaying data without proper context or using metrics that are flawed right from the outset can be outright counterproductive. It can actively work against your true objectives. The classic business novel The Goal provides a great example of this. A company installs state-of-the-art robots, right? A huge investment everyone expects will lead to increased productivity and more money, yet it doesn't. Why? Because the underlying goal being measured, often something like local optimization, maybe maximizing robot utilization, wasn't truly aligned with the system's overall goal of making money for the company.
So they were measuring the wrong thing, essentially.
Exactly. The true insight from The Goal isn't just that bad metrics are bad, it's that seemingly logical, well-intentioned metrics can actively sabotage your overarching project if they aren't perfectly aligned with the system's true purpose. If the goal of a system is defined badly, if it doesn't truly reflect its welfare, the system cannot possibly produce a desirable result. As the book Thinking in Systems sagely warns us, systems have a terrible tendency to produce exactly and only what you ask them to produce. Be careful what you ask them to produce. The danger isn't just miscalculation, it's this kind of self-deception, where you optimize for a local maximum while the entire project falters.
That's such a vital point you've raised there. And to truly empower our listeners with this superpower of clarity and avoid that kind of self-deception, we turn to Edward Tufte, who gives us some incredibly powerful tools, starting with his first principle, maximizing the data ink ratio. This isn't just some academic concept, it's a core design philosophy. It suggests that nearly every single bit of ink on a graphic or pixel on a screen should represent data information, period. It should not be non-data ink, meaning elements that don't convey new data, nor should it be redundant data ink, which just repeats information unnecessarily. It's about ruthless efficiency and maximum effectiveness in visual communication. It's like every line, every shade, every stroke, every pixel should earn its rightful place by directly enhancing our understanding of the data.
It's a principle that really echoes a deep-seated desire for efficiency and purposeful design found throughout history, particularly in architecture, interestingly enough. Think about early builders like the ancient Greeks. One source describes them as being chary of scaffolding. They actively avoided useless labor that would leave no permanent trace behind. Now, this wasn't just about saving money or effort, although I'm sure those were factors. It reflected a profound, almost philosophical desire for efficiency, and for the architecture itself to cede to the means of execution. In essence, the form of the structure, its very existence, was intrinsically linked to and dictated by the available materials and construction methods rather than being some kind of extraneous addition. There was simply no room for anything that didn't contribute directly to the final functional form.
I love that analogy, the building itself being its own scaffolding in a way. It makes me think about how that same philosophy, stripping away the inessential, letting purpose dictate form, echoed through architectural history, didn't it? Because this focus on function over style is something we see so powerfully in influential architects like Le Corbusier. He famously argued that architecture has nothing to do with the styles. He believed that the plan is the generator of order and sensation, meaning the fundamental layout, the organizational logic, that's where true meaning and feeling originate. For him, the naked fact is a medium for an idea only by reason of the order that is applied to it. This philosophical stance perfectly mirrors Tufte's drive to strip away any non-essential ornamentation, any decorative frills, to let the inherent data or the underlying structure of the design speak for itself, unhindered and powerfully clear.
And this extends beautifully to Frank Lloyd Wright's vision of architectural freedom, too. He sought to express ideas organically, as he put it, free from the impositions of traditional styles and expectations. He allowed his designs to resonate deeply with their natural environment and their inherent purpose. This relentless pursuit of an authentic, unburdened expression where the building's form emerges naturally from its context and function. It's a powerful parallel to Tufte's quest for data designs where information flows naturally without artificial constraints or, well, visual baggage. It's all about letting the underlying truth and structure of the data emerge unimpeded by visual noise.
This next point is particularly compelling when we think about the consequences. This philosophy isn't just about embracing simplicity. It's also a powerful critique of decorative excess. Consider the idea of moving past pseudo-Greek, pseudo-Roman, or pseudo-Gothic styles, which were often just superficial applications of historical ornamentation, right? Instead, by focusing on underlying principles, truly new and effective art, and in our context, truly effective information design can emerge. As one source put it so well, a profusion of details can often mask a poverty of invention. It leads to inconvenient edifices that fail to respond to intelligence or taste. That's a powerful statement that translates so easily to our cluttered charts and dashboards today, doesn't it? If your diagram is full of unnecessary bells and whistles, it often hides the fact that it's not actually communicating anything profound or even useful.
Couldn't agree more. And in the practical world of construction, applying this principle of maximizing Jaya Inc. means a critical streamlining of project schedules. Take Gantt charts, for instance, or maybe more complex project schedule network diagrams. In their standard, often default format, these tools can be notorious for featuring heavy grid lines, unnecessary shading behind the bars, or redundant labels that simply repeat information already conveyed elsewhere. Tufte would argue quite rightly that these are all forms of non-data ink. They're clutter. Instead, by removing those heavy grid lines, maybe making them a very light gray or omitting them entirely and relying on clear labels by flattening those 3D bars to clean 2D rectangles, and by ensuring labels only provide new information, you focus the viewer's eye directly on the critical path, the duration, and the dependencies. Every visual element then truly serves to clarify the sequence and dependencies rather than just filling space.
And for project management dashboards, it means creating truly lean dashboards. The core insight here isn't just about making things pretty or less cluttered, though that's a benefit. It's about forcing a kind of brutal honesty in your reporting. By ruthlessly eliminating non-data ink, you compel yourself to prioritize only what's absolutely critical for decision-making. You want to see the key performance indicators, the critical path, the cost trends, the risk exposures, the raw metrics and actual trends. Not elaborate graphics, corporate branding elements that just detract from the data itself, or unnecessary 3D effects that actually make it harder to read and compare values. Imagine the power of a dashboard where every single pixel screams, "This is vital." It fundamentally shifts how quickly you grasp a problem and how decisively you can act. Every pixel should be data ink, dedicated to communicating the project's health.
Okay, so if maximizing data ink is about what to keep on your graphic, then Tufte's second principle is about what to ruthlessly remove. It's all about eliminating what he famously calls chart junk. This refers to all the visual debris that clutters a display without adding any information whatsoever. We're talking about gratuitous decoration, maybe redundant data encoding, or those heavy grid lines that do nothing but obscure the actual data patterns. It's essentially anything that makes you, the viewer, work harder to understand what you're seeing, or worse, actively distracts you from the core message.
And the high cost of visual clutter is something that has historical precedent, actually, reaching back centuries before modern data visualization even existed. I found this fantastic example from early printing that perfectly illustrates this point. In Joseph Moxon's Mechanic Exercises, which is this seminal text on 17th century printing techniques, he describes elements he called shouldering on letter forms. These were basically ornamental bits added for ornament's sake to the metal type. He notes that if the shoulder made an angle above 100 degrees, it would be more difficult to sink into copper through the type-making process. Okay, a technical issue. But crucially, he goes on to say that the broad shoulders would more or less be subject and very likely to be smear the strokes of the letter. So it makes the whole work show very nasty and unbeautiful.
It's fascinating. So the decoration actually messed up the printing.
Exactly. What's absolutely fascinating here is how these decorative elements, intended purely for aesthetics, actively detracted from the clarity and quality of the information being conveyed. It wasn't just an aesthetic problem. It was a fundamental functional flaw that made the text harder to read, made the printing process more difficult and error-prone, and ultimately undermined the very purpose of print, to convey information clearly. Moxon's detailed critique is a perfect historical illustration of chart junk in action, where attempts at superficial beauty or ornamentation actively degrade the utility and legibility of the information.
That's a brilliant historical parallel. Wow. But it makes me wonder, though, if even small aesthetic choices can have such detrimental functional impact. How do we distinguish between genuinely helpful visual cues and actual chart junk in our modern displays? Is there a fine line, or is it always black and white? Because when we think about it in architectural terms, Stuart Brand in How Buildings Learn talks about how buildings can become too overspecified to their original purpose to adapt easily, right? Leading to them being eventually torn down. Information displays can likewise become rigid and unadaptable due to excessive non-functional elements. It's like building something with so many decorative flourishes, so many irrelevant details that you can't actually use it effectively anymore. Its functionality is choked by its own ornamentation.
It's rarely black and white, I suppose, but the core principle Tufte pushes is, does it add information or just decoration? Does it facilitate understanding or merely occupy space? This ties into critiques, again from Brand, of postmodernism's fragmented self-consciousness and post-functional deconstructionism in architecture. These critiques highlight how a building can lose its language and intelligence when it prioritizes superficiality over reality and functionality. This perfectly echoes Tufte's argument against decorative data displays that lose sight of the data's fundamental purpose. If the visual doesn't serve to enlighten, if it doesn't clearly convey the underlying information, it ultimately fails, regardless of how artistic it tries to be.
And the human desire for clarity and order in our visual environments is just deeply ingrained, isn't it? Louis H. Sullivan, in his autobiography of an idea, had this truly visceral reaction to what he called stupid houses crowded together shoulder to shoulder like selfish hogs upon these trough-like lanes, and to confused and overwhelmed urban crowds. This isn't just architectural criticism, it speaks to a fundamental human need for order and clarity in our surroundings. It's a clear parallel to avoiding chart junk in data displays. We want to be able to navigate our environment, whether it's a bustling city street or a complex project dashboard, without feeling overwhelmed or confused by unnecessary visual noise.
Okay, beyond just clarity, Tufte insists on something even more fundamental: honesty and precision in visual displays. Information displays, he argues forcefully, should be honest. They should reflect the data accurately, without any distortion or ambiguity whatsoever. The visual representation must not mislead the audience, either intentionally or, frankly, accidentally. This isn't just about good design practice, it's really an ethical imperative. If your visual tells a different story than the underlying data, you're not just creating chart junk, you're potentially creating disinformation.
And this honesty, this pursuit of truthfulness in data, it really starts with having clearly defined goals for the entire system the data represents. As thinking in systems states so powerfully, the goal is the direction setter of the system. If that goal is defined badly, if it's not truly measuring what it's supposed to measure, then the system can't possibly produce a desirable result. Displays built on flawed objectives will inherently misinform because they're optimizing for the wrong thing.
Right, garbage in, garbage out, visually speaking.
Exactly. For those managing complex builds, this idea of badly defined goals resonates deeply, I think. Consider how often maybe a project's success is measured solely by hitting a specific budget target, even if that budget was unrealistic from the start or didn't account for true value delivering to the client. If the visual reports only show budget versus actual, without critical context about scope changes or quality compromises, they might celebrate hitting a target while the project's true welfare is actually suffering. It's that powerful reminder again. Systems have a terrible tendency to produce exactly and only what you ask them to produce. Be careful what you ask them to produce.
That's a profound warning, and it also helps explain maybe that historical tendency to conceal flaws, especially in fields like engineering where public trust is absolutely paramount. One fascinating historical account points out that back in the day, embarrassing speculations which were likely to undermine people's faith in the established methods of calculating the strength of structures were not encouraged.
Wow, really? They just swept it under the rug?
Apparently so, sometimes. It shows how a reluctance to be transparent about information or calculations, a deliberate obscuring of potential flaws, could lead to serious structural issues if not accurately represented and addressed. The visual representation, whether it's an engineering drawing or a stress analysis chart, has to tell the full, true story, not just a convenient or reassuring one. The integrity of the structure literally depends on it.
And here's where it gets particularly interesting, because this expands our understanding of chart junk beyond just visuals. Even terminology itself can be a form of chart junk of the mind. Back in the 16th century, the renowned mineralogist George Agricola insisted on using specific, non-standard terms like using the word stannum in a sense that was different from common usage at the time. This apparently led to considerable confusion to mineralogic literature for a century or two. Imagine that a simple misuse or redefinition of a word obscuring understanding for hundreds of years.
That's incredible conceptual clutter.
It perfectly underscores how even abstract elements like words, when not clearly and consistently defined, can create a form of mental clutter, obscuring rather than illuminating. It's a powerful lesson that clarity is not just visual, it's profoundly conceptual and linguistic. And in a dynamic project environment where speed and accuracy are paramount, it's absolutely essential to develop systems to communicate which parts are important to everybody in the plant, or in our context, across every discipline on a construction site to avoid idle time, costly errors, and ensure overall project efficiency. This demands clear, unambiguous signals, whether they are visual, linguistic, or procedural. Anything less is a form of project-level chart junk, really.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to a true champion of visual clarity in the construction world itself. Francis Ching. His architectural illustrations are renowned globally for their immediate, almost effortless clarity. They are, in essence, a perfect real-world embodiment of Tufte's principles, even though Ching works in a very different medium. Ching's extensive body of work demonstrates unequivocally that extraordinarily complex architectural and construction information can be conveyed elegantly, precisely, and effectively without any chart junk whatsoever. He somehow makes the complicated seem obvious, and that's a real testament to his design philosophy.
Ching is just a masterclass in profoundly respecting both the underlying data, the actual mechanics of construction, and his diverse audience, from students to seasoned professionals. His detailed architectural drawings, for example, provide these exhaustive examples of intricate construction details, whether you're looking at a typical ground floor wall framing system, the complex geometry of rafter framing, or the precise mechanics of a wood post beam connection. Ching's diagrams distill these incredibly complex physical relationships into easily digestible visuals. Every line, every label, every shaded area in his drawing serves a distinct, purposeful function. There's zero extraneous detail. Every bit of ink is data ink.
And he doesn't shy away from illustrating safety-critical elements either. Take stairway design, for instance. Ching's illustrations explicitly detail not just the terminology of required clearances, but also the different types of stairs, like straight run, L-shaped, or spiral. But it goes beyond just showing how to build them correctly. Critically, his accompanying text highlights the inherent dangers of visually appealing but functionally perilous designs, like winders, those wedge-shaped treads often used in turns. He points out they are perilously steep where they converge and too shallow for comfort and safety, necessitating strict code limitations. This demonstrates how good information design, by clearly illustrating both the correct and the dangerous aspects, is profoundly intertwined with safety and usability, not merely aesthetics. A clear drawing can literally save lives or prevent injuries.
Absolutely. And in terms of maximizing data ink in particularly complex scenarios, his approach to transparent structural information is exemplary. Consider post-tensioned concrete slab drawings, which are inherently dense with information lots going on there. Jink's team explicitly makes a conscious choice to omit the conventional steel reinforcing from these drawings for the sake of clarity.
They leave it out on purpose.
Yes, deliberately. They are removing potentially distracting information to highlight what's most crucial for understanding the structural behavior of the post-tension system itself, the complex tendon layouts and their precise draping within the concrete. This is a deliberate Tuftean decision. It focuses the viewer's attention squarely on the key unique elements of that specific structural system, making it far easier to comprehend its intricacies.
What consistently stands out to me in Ching's body of work is his consistent and incredibly effective use of clear, uncluttered tables for critical data. His books frequently use tables to outline essential information, such as fire-resistive ratings for major building elements across different construction types, say type IAB versus type 2AB. These are vital code requirements. These tables were meticulously designed to present this complex safety-critical data without any visual clutter whatsoever, making inherently complex code requirements incredibly accessible and actionable. It's all about getting you the information you need quickly and accurately without having to hunt through dense paragraphs of, legalistic text.
And this dedication to clear, precise documentation has such deep historical roots, long before modern building codes or Tufte himself. Architects like Andrea Palladios, centuries ago, meticulously documented plans, elevations, and intricate details for his temples and bridges, like the famous one over the Brenta River. He understood implicitly that precise, unambiguous drawings were absolutely essential for successful construction, particularly for projects that would be realized by others, maybe far away. The challenges he apparently faced in getting his plans graved time enough to have it printed just underscore the critical and often difficult importance of creating and disseminating clear visual records in construction. A challenge that, despite all our fancy digital tools, still resonates today with our own complex documentation needs, doesn't it?
It really does. So given these timeless principles from Tufte and the brilliant practical applications we see from Ching, how do we translate this into today's dynamic world of construction project management? Let's start with project management dashboards. These should be far more than just, a collection of basic metrics. They need to function as true visual roadmaps, to use the PMBOK guide's terminology. They must move beyond simplistic figures to show true, holistic progress, real-time costs, and emerging risks. Crucially, they should empower managers to identify, assess, and manage program trends effectively, not just react to isolated data points flashing red. A truly well-designed dashboard builds confidence from owners because it clearly tells the story of the project's health and its likely trajectory.
And this is precisely where modern technology can powerfully enhance this whole tough-to-ching philosophy. Leveraging what we discussed earlier, that urban big data streamed from sensors and networks like real-time traffic or environmental data collected by smart transportation devices. This can be directly fed into project logistics and site management dashboards. This isn't just about passively collecting data, it's about turning that raw input into genuinely actionable insights. Imagine a dashboard that shows optimal delivery routes based on live traffic conditions, or alerts you to potential noise violations based on real-time site monitoring, or even tracks workforce density in specific areas for safety compliance. This helps teams make dynamic, informed decisions on the fly without ever being overwhelmed by just an uncurated, noisy stream of raw data.
Okay, and when we look at foundational scheduling tools like Gantt charts and precedence diagrams, whether they're those older error notation scheduling calculations or the more commonly used precedence diagrams today, they're all fundamentally about representing the logical relationships among project schedule activities. The goal is clear. Optimize flow, manage dependencies, visualize the project timeline. But how often do we see these charts become so cluttered they're almost unusable?
All the time. And these aren't just fancy names, right? They represent different ways of visually mapping your project tasks. Arrow notation, which is less common now, places the activities themselves on the arrows connecting events. Precedence diagrams, which are far more prevalent today, place activities on the nodes or boxes, and the arrows show the relationships. The advantage of precedence diagrams, especially when leveraging lag relationships, is their ability to show much more subtle and complex dependencies. For example, a task might not need to wait for a preceding task to be 100% complete. Maybe it could start, say, 5 days after the preceding task has begun, even if that first task isn't fully finished yet. That's a lag. The key, in a Tuftean sense, is to present these potentially complex relationships without introducing visual clutter, ensuring the clarity of the overall project flow. The information should lead your eye directly to the critical path and potential bottlenecks, not distract you with extraneous lines, confusing colors, or overly complex symbols. Keep it clean.
Architectural drawings themselves are undergoing this profound transformation too, aren't they? Modern building information modeling, or BIM tools, are moving us far beyond traditional static 2D technical drawings. They now offer 3D visualizations and conceptual building information models that are just far more communicative and informative to laypeople. Think clients, community members, non-technical stakeholders, people who might really struggle to read and understand a traditional blueprint. You can even get 4D models, which integrate the element of time, adding the schedule to the 3D model. And these are often used in community forums to explain complex project impacts, say on local traffic flow during different phases of construction, or how access to critical facilities like hospitals might be temporarily affected. This ensures that diverse stakeholders can truly understand complex designs, moving past static, often impenetrable blueprints to dynamic, engaging visualizations.
What's truly fascinating there is how BIM also significantly enhances practical site logistics by visually managing everything from laydown areas for materials to precise equipment placement and critical access routes. It enables far better trade coordination, for example, by visualizing the expected time and space flow of trades moving through the building. And it helps identify potential conflicts for work in small or confined spaces before they ever happen on site. This proactive visual clash detection and spatial planning directly applies Tufte's principles to physical organization and process planning on the ground. And critically, this visual clarity in BIM helps immensely in avoiding ambiguity in intricate details for complex assemblies like roof framing, window jambs, and wall details. As various builder guides frequently illustrate with horror stories, a lack of visual precision in these areas is a really common source of costly errors and rework during construction.
Looking to the future now, digital design and fabrication tools, like BIM platforms and even scripting languages such as ArchiCAD's GDL, they're incredibly powerful. They allow for the precise modification and even direct fabrication of the physical world, which is amazing. However, the true value comes not from merely generating more complex or flashy visuals, but from using these tools to clarify. Defining digital fabrication performance clearly, for example, is absolutely essential for diverse stakeholders to understand its implications, from cost implications to constructability issues to the final aesthetic outcome. It's about empowering everyone involved with lucid, understandable information, not overwhelming them with digital pyrotechnics or overly complex models.
And if we connect this to the even bigger picture, the concept of cybernetics applied to architecture might sound a bit intimidating or sci-fi. But it's really about designing smart, responsive information systems for our projects. Think of it as engineering information flows that can regulate themselves, reproduce themselves, evolve, and learn. Imagine that. Instead of static reports that are quickly outdated the moment they're printed, imagine your project information system becoming a dynamic, adaptive catalyst, crutch, memory, and arbiter. It would constantly feed you the most crucial, up-to-date insights, learn from past project performance data to predict future challenges, and maybe even suggest optimal paths forward based on real-time conditions. This means our visual displays, our dashboards, can become truly intelligent interfaces, helping us navigate complexity with unparalleled elegance and precision.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we've really seen how Edward Tuft's unwavering commitment to clarity, to honesty, and elegance in information design, embodied so beautifully and practically in the work of someone like Francis Chang. It's not merely an aesthetic preference, not at all. It is, in fact, a fundamental soft skill, a crucial competency for effective communication, for making sound decisions, and ultimately for achieving consistent project success in the incredibly complex world of construction. From rigorously avoiding that chart junk in your Gantt charts to maximizing the data-ink ratio in your project dashboards, the underlying goal is always the same: to step back and let the data in its purest form speak for itself.
So, what does this all mean for you, the person grappling with information every single day on your projects? Consider this final thought. If the naked fact is a medium for an idea only by reason of the order that is applied to it, as Le Corbusier so eloquently argued all those years ago, then what idea are your visual displays truly conveying right now? And perhaps more importantly, what profound insights might they reveal if you simply got out of their way, stripped back the clutter, minimized the chart junk, maximized the data ink, and allowed the truth of the data to shine through, unhindered and unambiguous? It's a question worth pondering every time you craft a report or glance at a dashboard, isn't it?